The snow fell harder than I'd seen in years. It swallowed the narrow mountain road in a blanket of white silence. My SUV wheezed, coughed, and finally died just 10 miles from the nearest gas station, 20 from the city, and a lifetime from comfort. In the back seat, my 5-year-old son Jamie stirred, his forehead hot with fever and a bandage pressing against his temple. He'd hit his head when the car skidded into a ditch. The world sees me now as a billionaire, a tycoon, a tech magnate, a legend in boardrooms and on magazine covers. But that night, I was just a father with a sick child, stranded in the cold, facing a storm both outside and within. I hadn't always been rich. In fact, most of my life, I'd been poor. Abandoned by my parents at 11, raised in shelters, taught to steal bread before I was taught to write my name. My success didn't come from luck, it came from fire. From hunger. From watching the world ignore me, then deciding I would never be invisible again. But even billionaires bleed. That night I was reminded just how fragile success is. I carried Jamie in my arms, the snow crunching under each exhausted step. Darkness had devoured the trail. No lights, no help. Then, as if mercy had heard my prayer, I saw a dim glow from a small log cabin nestled between trees. Smoke rose from the chimney. Warmth. Hope. I knocked. The door opened a crack. A young woman peeked out. Her eyes were cautious but kind, the sort of eyes that had seen pain but never allowed it to poison the soul. She wore a frayed sweater and jeans patched at the knees. Her hair was golden, untamed, and her hand shook slightly from either cold or fear or both. "Please," I said, "my son is hurt. We just need shelter for the night." She opened the door wide without another word. The cabin was humble. Wooden walls, a flickering fire, and a handmade cot. No TV, no gadgets, just survival. She helped me lay Jamie down, checking his fever, fetching a bowl of warm water and herbs from a shelf. No hesitation, no questions. Just quiet empathy. "You're lucky you found me," she finally said, her voice soft. "Nearest house is 12 miles out. You'd have frozen. What's your name?" I asked. "Callie." "Thank you, Callie." That night, as Jamie slept beside the fire, I watched Callie boil soup with shaking hands. I noticed the cupboard was nearly bare, the heater was broken, the window cracked. She had no car, no phone service, no backup, and yet she took us in, no charge. No demands. I offered her money. She refused. "I didn't do it for that," she said. She didn't know me. She didn't know I owned several companies, employed thousands, or sat on panels with presidents and kings. She didn't know my face had graced Forbes or that my name was whispered in Silicon Valley like a legend. She just saw a man in need and helped. Stayed up that night watching Jamie's chest rise and fall. I hadn't felt such gratitude in years. And for the first time in a long while, I thought not about deals, stocks, or mergers, but about kindness. Callie changed something in me. The next morning, I asked about her story. She was 23. Her parents died when she was 16. She inherited the cabin but had no income, no siblings, no degree. She tried working in town, but without transportation or support, she had to return. Life had taught her to endure. And that's what she did day after day, alone in a house the world forgot. Before I left, I wrote down my number. "If you ever need anything," I told her, "call me." She smiled politely and tucked it into her drawer. I doubted she would. 2 months passed. I went back to my world. Suits, meetings, headlines. But something gnawed at me. I kept thinking about that night. About her selflessness. About how I, a man with unlimited resources, could have frozen to death with my child if not for her dot, so I went back. But the cabin was empty. A neighbor said she'd fallen ill. moved to a shelter in town, and had been trying to find part-time work. I searched for her for 3 weeks. Finally, I found her working as a cashier in a rundown grocery store, pale and thinner than before. I bought the store that night. The next morning, she came to work and found the windows covered in glossy posters that read, "Under new ownership. Free groceries today." And when she walked in, I handed her a new contract. Not as a cashier, but as my executive assistant. She was stunned. "I don't know how to do that," she whispered. "You knew how to save a stranger," I replied. "You'll learn the rest." What Callie didn't know was that I wasn't just offering her a job. I was offering her a path out, because someone once did that for me. When I was 19, homeless, and sleeping behind a gym, a man named Arthur Fields offered me work cleaning offices. He didn't need to, but he saw something in me. And when I asked why he gave me a chance, he said, "The ones who struggle often shine brightest. They just need someone to hand them a match." I never forgot that. Callie became more than an assistant. She became the voice I listened to before every major decision. She had insight I didn't, compassion I lacked. Her suggestions saved us millions. Her ideas transformed departments. She learned everything fast. In 2 years, she became a senior executive. In 5, she became CEO of one of our subsidiaries. In 7, she started her own foundation. And me? I watched her rise like the phoenix she didn't know she was. She still lives simply, still visits the cabin every winter. But now she owns the entire mountain range around it. And every Christmas, she invites those in need to stay there, no questions asked, just like she did for me. Sometimes success doesn't begin with a grand vision. It begins with a cold night, a cracked window, and a simple act of kindness. After hiring Callie, I didn't just give her a job, I gave her access. Access to rooms few ever enter. Meetings where futures are shaped. Markets, margins, global impact. And at first, she was hesitant, unsure, always second-guessing her voice. But it didn't take long before I saw what she didn't yet know she had. Instinct. At a quarterly strategy meeting, one of our regional directors proposed shuttering a line of products that, on the surface, were underperforming. "It's bleeding money," he insisted. "Cut it loose." Callie raised her hand. "Have you ever looked at where most of those products are being shipped?" The room paused. Rural areas? Places with no access to other brands. If we cut that line, we're abandoning the only affordable option many communities have. What if, instead, we improve the supply chain and add local partnerships? I watched in silence. This was her first major meeting, but her idea, it was genius. Not just ethically, it made business sense. Her plan not only salvaged the product line, within 18 months, it became our second highest revenue generator. She was learning fast, but more importantly, she was thinking like a leader. I remembered what Arthur Fields once told me when I was just starting out. Never measure someone's potential by where they are. Measure it by what they do with where they've been. Callie had lived with nothing. And people who've had nothing tend to see what matters faster than those born into excess. Lesson number 1. Value isn't always loud. Sometimes it whispers. Callie didn't speak often. But when she did, the board listened. Because her thoughts weren't coded in ego, they were carved from experience. Over time, I started involving her in more confidential matters, acquisitions, negotiations, even damage control during crisis PR moments. Her opinions were unorthodox, and at times counterintuitive, but time and time again, she was right. When our main competitor tried to poach one of our tech developers with a multi-million-dollar offer, Callie suggested not to counter with a higher salary. Why? I asked. Because he doesn't want more money. He wants meaning. Invite him to lead a project he believes in. I did. We kept him. That project turned into a tech platform now used by over 30 million people globally. Lesson number 2. People don't follow money. They follow purpose. By year 3, I made Callie the face of one of our emerging companies, a clean water initiative that aimed to provide sustainable filtration to underserved areas. We didn't announce her promotion with press releases or glamour. Instead, she flew to a forgotten village in South America where our pilot plant launched. She spent 3 weeks there, installing units herself, listening to villagers, documenting stories. That footage eventually became a viral documentary that reshaped our brand. Not just as a corporation, but as a movement. Suddenly, everyone wanted to partner with us. Governments, NGOs, even rival companies. But none of that compared to what happened. Next, lesson number 3. Reputation isn't built in silence, it's forged. In service. One day, Callie walked into my office holding a worn-out notebook. "I've been working on something," she said. Inside were 87 pages of business plans, ideas, outreach models, and digital prototypes for something she called the Root Project. A non-profit ecosystem that wouldn't just hand out aid but would train, fund, and mentor women in developing countries to become entrepreneurs. It wasn't just good. It was revolutionary. "I want to leave the company," she said softly. "To build this." I looked at her. The young woman I met on a snowy night. The one who had saved my son. The one who now wanted to save the world. I nodded. "You won't be leaving. You'll be leading with us, backing you 100%. We launched the Root Project with a $20 million fund and a full in-house team. Within 18 months, it had trained 15,000 women across 12 countries. The world took notice. Awards poured in. Ted invited her. So did Time. She was featured on the cover of Entrepreneur magazine, but the spotlight never changed her. In fact, she hated it. "What matters isn't who sees me," she said. "What matters is who gets to see themselves in me." That line went viral. Not because it was catchy, but because it was true. Meanwhile, back at our headquarters, something unexpected was happening. I had always believed I would run this empire until I couldn't anymore. That I'd be at the helm until my last breath. But watching Callie, watching the way people followed her, trusted her, lit up around her, I began to question something I never thought I would. Was I still the best person to lead? The answer wasn't no, but it also wasn't yes. And that's when I realized lesson number 4. Legacy isn't what you build. It's who you build. So one crisp fall morning, I called the board. I told them I was stepping down as CEO. They panicked. Until I told them who I was recommending as my successor, some resisted. She was too young, too emotional, too different. But when I reminded them that our biggest wins in the last 5 years all had her fingerprints on them, they listened and voted unanimously. Callie became the youngest CEO in our firm's history. But to her, titles never mattered. Only impact did. She called me 2 nights later. "What if I fail?" she asked. "You already won," I said. "You just haven't finished yet. And now, well, now I work under her by choice. I advise. I mentor. I write. But I'm no longer the front man. She is. And the company? It's better than it's ever been. More human. More innovative. More respected, because she leads from where it matters most, the heart. But here's what nobody knows, what no Forbes profile or keynote speech ever reveals. Everything we are now started with one girl opening one door on one freezing night to one man and his son, and expecting nothing in return. People assume the hardest part about becoming a billionaire is building the empire. It's not. The hardest part is remembering why you started, Because once the money comes, so do the distractions, the limelight, the leeches, the lies you start telling yourself just to keep playing the game. I know this because I lived it. Before the night I met Callie, I was already wealthy beyond reason. But wealth without direction is just noise in a golden echo chamber. That night didn't just change her life, it rescued mine. But to truly understand that, you need to know where I came from. Lesson number 5. Every empire begins at rock bottom. Was 16 when I hit mine. I'd been couch surfing for 3 years, too old for the system to care, too young for the world to respect. One winter, I found myself living in the back of a shut-down auto shop in Cleveland. No heat, no electricity. Just metal walls and a busted cot. I worked odd jobs moving pallets, scraping floors, anything to make enough for peanut butter and bread. Then came the night someone mugged me for the $40 I'd saved in a jar. I got punched hard, broke a rib, slept that night bleeding into my hoodie. That was my bottom, but also my turning point. Because in that moment, gasping for air, I promised myself, if I survive this, I will never be this powerless again. Not out of pride, out of purpose. Over the next 6 years, I taught myself coding in libraries, slept under desks at community colleges I wasn't even enrolled in, and watched YouTube videos on business until my phone battery died each night. I sent out 372 job applications before someone said yes. It was at a third-rate tech repair shop, but that first paycheck felt like a medal. Within 5 years, I built my first software product. It failed. Then I built another. It failed too. I failed forward again and again until one day I didn't. My third startup, a simple scheduling tool for freelancers, went viral. A major firm acquired it for $1.3 million. I cried in a stairwell the day that wire hit my account. Not because I was rich, because I was free. But freedom has a funny way of morphing into fear. You start to worry about losing what you've built. You start playing it safe. Slowly, the fire that got you out of the gutter dims behind luxury and boardrooms. And that's what happened to me before Callie. I had become numb. It wasn't until I saw that girl struggling, alone, yet still helping strangers, that I felt the fire again. She reminded me that survival isn't weakness. It's a credential. People who've been to the bottom don't just survive, they see differently. They listen with their eyes. They lead without ego. They love without guarantees. When Callie took over the company, she started doing things I never would have dared to do. She dismantled 3 profit-heavy departments that didn't align with ethical sustainability goals. She reduced executive bonuses by 40% and raised entry-level pay across the board. She implemented a company-wide mentorship model, pairing interns with VPs, ensuring no one climbed the ladder alone. At first, investors panicked. Then the numbers rolled in. Productivity skyrocketed. Retention hit record highs. Our customer loyalty tripled. And for the first time in our company's history, our brand topped the most trusted tech firm index worldwide. And she did all that without yelling once. She didn't lead by fear. She led by vision. I asked her once, late one evening, in the office, where do you get the courage to do what no one else will? She looked at me, quiet for a moment. Then she said, when you've had nothing, everything becomes possible. What's the worst that can happen? I go back to surviving? I already know how. Lesson number 6. People who've been through hell are never afraid of fire, but success tests people in strange ways. While the world praised her, not everyone supported her. Critics whispered that she was too emotional, too young, too non-traditional for the C-suite. A few major players tried to sabotage her projects. Others tried to push her out quietly. But the thing about Callie? She doesn't break. She bends, she bleeds, but she never breaks. In fact, when one of our competitors leaked internal documents trying to discredit her, she called a press conference. Not to deny the reports, but to own them. Yes, she said publicly. I made mistakes. I trusted the wrong vendors. I approved 2 strategies that didn't work. I'm still learning. But here's what I won't do. Pretend I'm perfect just to protect my ego. Because no company was ever built on image. It was built on people. Silence. Then a standing ovation. The next day, our stock rose 6%. Not because of the numbers, but because of the character behind them. When I started out, I thought building a billion-dollar company would make me invincible. But Callie taught me something else entirely. You don't become powerful by winning. You become powerful by lifting others while you do. She launched a new initiative called From Shelter to CEO, a business boot camp for young women aging out of foster care. She said, it's not just about teaching them to pitch ideas, it's about helping them believe they can. In the first 6 months, 6 girls raised seed funding for their startups. And in the first year, one of them made her first $1 million. And just last month, 10 years after that snowy night, I sat on the front row at a conference where Callie delivered a keynote to an audience of 4,000 entrepreneurs. She told the story not of her rise, but of her beginning. She spoke about her parents, the loneliness of the cabin, the fear she'd never leave it, and the stranger who knocked on her door with a sick child and no way home. She said, I didn't save him. He saved me. Because that night reminded me that the world is still worth believing in. And then, she did something I'll never forget. She turned toward me in the crowd and said, he gave me a chance. I turned it into a calling, and if I can, so can you. I wept. The billionaire who'd been on every list, won every award, made every headline, cried. Because in that moment I realized my greatest achievement wasn't my wealth. It was her. 10 years had passed since the night my SUV died in the snow. 10 years since a young girl with nothing but a kind heart and a cracked fireplace let a stranger and his fevered son sleep under her roof. In those 10 years, I'd watched that same girl transform from a forgotten soul into a force that changed lives, mine included. Callie didn't just break the mold, she burned it and built something entirely new. And yet, for all the headlines, the accolades, the keynote speeches, and Fortune 500 magazine covers, her spirit never changed. She still wore that same frayed sweater. Some days, she still returned to the mountain cabin every winter. She still refused first-class tickets and made time to write hand-signed letters to the young women in her foundation. Callie had become a billionaire. But if you met her, you'd think she was just someone's older sister who happened to be good at listening. Lesson number 7. True. Wealth isn't measured by what you keep. It's measured by what you give. A few years ago, we had a conversation that's never left me. We were walking through a shelter in Detroit that her foundation had renovated, complete with solar panels, career development pods, therapy rooms, and dorms for single mothers. I looked around in awe. She was silent. You okay? I asked. She nodded. I used to dream of this exact shelter? No, just this feeling of giving people back their future. I remember something Arthur Fields once said to me long ago when I just made my first $1 million. Money will buy you time. Impact will buy you immortality. Back then, I didn't understand it. Now, watching Callie hug a 5-year-old boy who reminded me of Jamie, I did. Completely. She eventually became a partner in every business I owned, not because she asked, but because I couldn't imagine building anything without her. She helped restructure our education tech startup to provide free licenses to 40,000 low-income schools. She launched a refugee employment program using our logistics arm. She even helped spearhead a tech-driven sustainability fund, investing in minority-led green startups around the globe. She had made giving back the foundation of every business model. And that wasn't just moral, it was wildly successful. Because people believe in brands that believe in them. But there's one story that still brings me to tears. It was Jamie's graduation. He was 15 when we were stuck in that storm. He's 25 now, a med school graduate, and the kindest man I know. When he gave his speech, he looked into the crowd, paused, and said, "I want to thank the woman who saved my life before I knew it needed saving. You opened your door that night. But more than that, you opened a path my father and I didn't even realize we'd lost. Because of you, I grew up watching what real strength looks like. Callie, thank you for being my second mother." She cried. We all did. After the ceremony, she pulled me aside and asked, "Do you ever regret leaving the spotlight?" I laughed. No, it was the best decision I ever made. She smiled, a little sad. I've been thinking. I might step away. For a while. Why? I want to start over. Not from scratch, from service. Just me, a few ideas, and some people who believe in each other. No boardrooms, no interviews. Just building again. And you'll do it? Already started. 6 months later, she disappeared from headlines. No one knew where she went, but I did. She moved to a coastal town in Portugal. Small house, quiet life. Still mentoring, still writing, still changing lives in ways that didn't need to be broadcast. She'd achieved what so few billionaires ever do. She let go. Not because she was tired, but because she'd already lit so many torches she didn't need to hold hers anymore. Now, I'm older, slower, but happier. Because I lived long enough to see someone better than me rise. Someone who turned compassion into capital, pain into purpose, and silence into a symphony of change. And it all started with a door. Cold night. A girl who had nothing and gave everything. Final lesson. Success isn't found at the top. It's found in the moments you choose others when the world tells you to choose yourself. If you're watching this video because you think you need money to start, you don't. If you think you need power to matter, you don't. All you need is a reason, a truth, and the willingness to open your door when someone knocks, because you never know. That stranger might be a billionaire CEO who'll one day change your life. Or maybe you'll be the one who changes his. The end.